much for coming. We're very excited to perform for you tonight. Every year, as the performance gets closer and closer, I start talking to my actors about the reason that we put on a play at all. And I remind them that they're part of a community that has given them so much, and that it's rare for them to have an opportunity to give something back to the community that they're a part of. So I tell them that art is always a gift. It's a gift from the maker of the art to those who receive it. And I encourage them to think of the performance as a gift to their community. I hope that that is what you will receive as a beautiful gift. A few words about the play. It is, as Mr. Moore alluded, somewhat strange in that it has 2 intermissions instead of 1, and it's intentionally set up with a sparse stage and few props. Most of the props and set pieces are intended to be mimed. Thornton Wilder does this in part, he said, to encourage the audience to engage their imagination in a way that he felt the theater had been moving away from in his time. So I hope that you will experience the same thing. And without any further ado, I present to you Thornton Wilder's Our Town.
This play is called Our Town. It was written by Thornton Wilder, produced and directed by Mr. Turntine. In it, you will see Miss Fike, Miss Alvarez, Miss Galvez, and Mr. Haggard, Mr. Ellis, Mr. Seeley, and many others. The name of the town is Grover's Corners, New Hampshire, just across the Massachusetts line. Latitude 42 degrees, 40 minutes, longitude 70 degrees, 37 minutes. The first act shows a day in our town. The day is May 6th, 1901. The time, just before dawn. The sky is just beginning to show some streaks of light over in the east there, behind our mountain. The morning star always gets wonderful bright the minute before it has to go, doesn't it? Well, I'd better show you how our town lies. Now up here is Main Street. Way back there's a railway station. Tracks go that way. Polish towns across the tracks and some Canuck families. Over there is a Congregational church. Across the street's Presbyterian. Methodist and Unitarian over there. Baptist is down in the hollow by the river. Catholic church is over beyond the tracks. Over here is Town Hall and the post office combined. Jail's in the basement. Brian once made a speech from these very steps here. Now along here's a row of stores. Horse blocks and hitching posts in front of them. First automobile is going to come along in about 5 years. Belonged to Banker Cartwright, our richest citizen. He lives in that big white house up on the hill. Here's a grocery store, and here's Mr. Morgan's drugstore. Most everybody in town managed to find time to look into these 2 stores at least once a day. Public school's over yonder, and high school's still farther over. 8:45 mornings, noon times, and 3 o'clock afternoons, the whole town could hear the yelling and screaming coming from those schoolyards. This is our doctor's house, Doc Gibbs. This is the back door. There's some scenery, for those who think they have to have scenery. And here's Mrs. Gibbs' garden. Corn, peas, beans, hollyhocks, heliotrope, and a lot of burdock. In those days, our town paper come out twice a week, the Grover's Corner Sentinel. And this is Editor Webb's house. Here's Mrs. Webb's garden. Just like Mrs. Gibbs, only it's got a lot of sunflower too. Right here is a big butternut tree. Nice town. You know what I mean? Nobody very remarkable ever come out of it as far as we know. The earliest tombstones up in the cemetery say 1670 to 1680. They're all Grovers and Cartwrights and Gibbses and Herseys. Same names as around here now. Well, as I said, it's about dawn. The only lights on in town are in a cottage over by the tracks, where a Polish mother's just had twins. And in the Joe Crowell house, where Joe Crowell Jr. is getting up so as to deliver the paper. And in the depot, where Shorty Hawkins is getting ready to flag the 5:45 for Boston. Naturally, out in the country all around, there had been lights on for some time. What with the Milkins and so on. But town people sleep late. So, another day's begun. There's Doc Gibbs coming down Main Street now, and he and his wife coming downstairs to get breakfast. Doc Gibbs died in 1930. A new hospital is named after him. His wife died first. A long time ago, in fact. She went to visit her daughter, Rebecca, who married an insurance man down in Canton, Ohio, and died there. Pneumonia. When her body was brought back here, she's up in the cemetery now, in with a whole mess of Gibbses and Herseys. She was Julia Hersey before she married Doc Gibbs in the Congregational Church over there. In our town, we like to know the facts about everybody. Here's Mrs. Lip coming downstairs to get her breakfast too. That's Doc Gibbs. Got that call at 1:30 this morning. And here's Joe Crowell Jr. delivering the paper.
Morning, Doc Gibbs.
Morning, Howie.
Somebody been sick, Doc?
No, just a pair of twins bowling over in Polish Town.
Do you want your paper now?
Yes, I'll take it. Anything serious going on in the world since Wednesday?
Yes, sir. The school teacher, Miss Foster, is getting married to a fellow over in Concord.
I declare. How do you boys feel about that?
Well, of course it's none of my business. But I think that if a person starts out to be a teacher, she ought to stay one.
How's your knee, Joe?
Oh, it's fine, Doc. Never think about it at all. Only, just like you said, always tells me when it's gonna rain.
What's it telling you today, Joe? Going to rain?
No, sir.
Sure?
Yes, sir.
Knee ever make a mistake?
No, sir.
I want to tell you something about that boy Joe Crowell there. Joe was awful bright. Graduated from high school here, head of his class. So he got a scholarship to Massachusetts Tech. Graduated head of his class there too. It was all wrote up in the Boston paper at the time. But the war broke out, and he died in France. All that education for nothing.
Get up, Bessie. What's the matter with you today?
Here comes Howie Newsom delivering the milk.
Morning, Doc.
Morning, Howie.
Somebody sick?
Pair of twins over to Mrs. Goroslowski's.
Twins, eh? This town's getting bigger every year.
Going to rain, Howie?
No. That'll burn through. Come on, Bessie.
Hello, Bessie. How old is she, Howie?
Going on 17. Bessie's all mixed up about the route. Ever since the Lockharts stopped taking their quart of milk every day. She still wants them to leave a quart. She keeps scolding me the whole trip.
Morning, Howie.
Morning, Mrs. Gibbs. Doc just coming down the street.
Is he? Seems like you're late today.
Yes, something went wrong with the separator. Don't know what it was. Doc?
Howie?
Children!
Come on,
Children,
Bessie.
time to get up! George! Rebecca! Everything all right, Frank?
Yes, I declare. Easy as kittens.
Bacon will be ready in a minute. Sit down and drink your coffee. You can catch a couple hours sleep this morning, can't you?
Mrs. Wentworth's coming at 11. Suppose I know it's about too. The stomach ain't what it ought to be.
Oh, all told, you won't get more than 3 hours of sleep. Frank Gibbs, I don't know what's become of you. I do wish you can go away someplace and take a rest. I think it would do you some good.
Wally, time to get up. Emily, 7 o'clock.
I declare, you've got to speak to George. Seems like something's come over him lately. He's no help to me at all. I can't even get him to cut me some wood.
Is he sassy to you?
No, he just whines. All he thinks about is that baseball. George! Rebecca! You'll be late for school! George!
George, look sharp. Don't you hear Mother calling you?
Yes, Pa.
Guess I better head upstairs and catch 40 winks.
Emily, you'll be late for school. Wally, you wash yourself good or I'll go up there and do it myself.
Mama, what dress should I wear? Now hush up. Your father's been out all night and he needs his rest. I washed and on the blue gingham dress for you special.
Aw, Mom, I hate that dress.
Oh, hush up with you.
Every day I go to school dressed like a sick turkey.
Now, Rebecca, you always look very nice.
Mama, George is throwing soap at me.
I'll come up and slap the both of you. That's what I'll do.
We've got a factory in our town, too. Hear it? Makes blankets. Cartwrights own it, and it brung him a fortune.
Children, I won't have it. Breakfast is just as good as any other meal, and I won't have you gobbling like wolves. It'll stunt your growth. That's a fact. Put away your book, Wally.
Mom, by 10 o'clock, I gotta know all about Canada.
You know the rules as well as I do. No books at table. As for me, I'd rather have my children healthy than bright.
I'm both, Mama. You know I am. I'm the brightest girl in school for my age. I have a wonderful memory.
Eat your breakfast.
I'm bright too, when I'm looking at my stamp collection.
I'll talk to your father after he's rested. Seems to me like 25 cents a week's enough for a boy your age. I declare, I don't know how you spend it all.
Oh, Ma, I got a lot of stuff to buy.
Strawberry phosphates, that's what you spend it on.
I don't see why Rebecca comes to have so much money. She has more than $1.
I've been saving up gradual.
Well, dear, I think it's good to spend it every now and then.
Mama, do you know what I love most in this world? Do you? Money.
Eat your breakfast.
Mama, that's
Where's
not
Becca?
I don't want anymore.
Walk fast, but you don't have to run. Pull up your pants at the knee, Wally. Stand up straight, Emily.
Tell Miss Foster I send her my best congratulations. Can you remember that?
Yes, Mom.
You look very nice, Rebecca. Now pick up your feet.
Bye, Ma.
Bye.
Hey, Roy. You know that kid, right?
Here, chick, chick, chick. Here, chick, chick, chick. No, go away, you. Go away. All you do is fight, fight, fight. Now, where did you come from? I don't remember seeing you here. Morning, Myrtle. How's your cold?
Well, I still get that tickling feeling in my throat. I told Charles I didn't know as I'd go to choir practice tonight. Wouldn't be any use.
Have you tried singing over your voice?
Yes, but I can't do that and stay on key. While I'm resting myself, I thought I'd string some of these beans.
Here, let me help you. Beans have been good this year.
I've decided to put up 40 quarts if it kills me. The children say they hate them, but I notice they get them down on winter.
You know, Myrtle, I've got to tell you something. Because if I don't tell someone, I'll burst.
Why, Julia Gibbs.
Here, hand me some more of those beans. Myrtle, did one of those second-hand furniture men from Boston come to see you last Friday?
No.
Well, he called on me. First, I thought he was a patient, wanted to see Dr. Gibbs. He wormed his way into my parlor. And Myrtle Webb, he offered me $350 for Grandma Wentworth's highboy.
Why,
as I'm sitting here.
Why, Julia Gibbs?
He did. That old thing. I didn't know where I was going to put it. And to think I almost gave it to Cousin Hester Wilcox.
Well, you're going to take it, aren't you?
Oh, I don't know.
You don't know? $350? What's come over you?
Well, if I could get the doctor to take the money and go on a real trip someplace, I'd sell it like that. You know, Myrtle, it's been a dream of my life to see Paris, France. Oh, I don't know. Sounds crazy, I suppose. But I've been telling myself that if I ever had the chance, I would...
How did the doctor feel about it?
Well, he did beat around the bush a little. But I said that if I ever got a legacy, a juicy legacy, that's how I put it, I'd make him take me someplace.
What did he say?
Oh, well, you know how he is. I haven't heard a serious word from him since the day I met him. No, he said it would leave him discontented with Grover's Corners to go traipsing around Europe. Better leave well enough alone, he says. Every 2 years, he makes a trip to the battlefields of the Civil War. That's a good enough treat for anybody, he says.
Well, Mr. Webb just admires the way Dr. Gibbs knows all about the Civil War. Mr. Webb was a right mind to give up Napoleon and move over to the Civil War. Only Doc Gibbs, being the greatest expert in the country, simply makes him despair.
It's a fact. Doc Gibbs is never so happy as when he's at Antietam of Gettysburg. Oh, the times I've walked over those hills, Myrtle. Stopping at every bush, pacing it all out as if we're going to buy it.
Well, if that second-hand man's serious about buying it, Julia, you sell it. Then you'll get to see Paris, all right. Just keep dropping hints from time to time. That's how I got to see the Atlantic Ocean, you know.
Oh, well, I'm sorry I mentioned it. Only it seems to me that once in your life, you ought to go to a country where they don't speak English, and they don't even want to.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you very much. Now we're going to skip a couple of hours. But before we do, we want to have a little more information about the town. Sort of a scientific account, you might say. So I've asked Professor Willard of our state university to sketch in a few details of our past history here. Is Professor Willard here? May I introduce Professor Willard of our state university? Just a few brief notes, Professor. Unfortunately, our time is limited.
Grover's Corners. Let me see. Grover's Corners lies on the old Pleistocene granite of the Appalachian Range. I may say some of the oldest lands in the world. We're very proud of that. A shelf of Devonian basalt crosses it with vestiges of Mesozoic shale and some sandstone outcroppings. But that's all more recent. 200, 300 million years old. Some highly interesting fossils have been found, I may say, unique fossils, in Silas Peckham's cow pasture. They may be seen at the museum in our university at any time. That is, at any reasonable time. Shall I go over some of Professor Gruber's notes on the meteorological situation, mean precipitation, etc.?
I'm afraid we don't have time for that, Professor. We might have a few brief notes on the history of man here.
Yes, anthropological data. Early Amerindian stock, Cotahatchee tribes, no evidence before the 10th century of this era. Now entirely disappeared. Possible traces in 3 families. Migration towards the end of the 17th century of the English brachiocephalic blue-eyed stock, for the most part. Since then, some Slav and Mediterranean...
And the population, Professor?
Within the town limits, 2,640.
Just a minute, Professor.
Ah, yes indeed. The population at the moment is 2,642. The postal district brings in 507 more, making a total of 3,149. Mortality and birth rates constant. By McPherson's age, 6.032.
Thank you very much, Professor. We're all very much obliged, I'm sure.
Not at all, sir, not at all.
This way, Professor, and thank you. Now for the political and social report. Editor Webb. Oh, Mrs. Webb.
He'll be here in a minute. He just cut his hand while he was eating an apple.
Thank you, Mrs. Webb.
Charles, everybody's waiting.
Mr. Webb is the editor and publisher of the Grover's Corner Sentinel. That's our local paper, you know.
Well, I don't have to tell you that we're run here by a board of selectmen. All males vote at the age of 21, women vote indirect. We're lower middle class, sprinkling up professional men, 10% illiterate laborers. Politically, we're 86% Republicans, 6% Democrats, 4% Socialists, rest indifferent. Religiously, we're 85% Protestants, 12% Catholics, rest indifferent.
Have you any comments, Mr. Webb?
Very ordinary town, if you ask me. Little better behaved than most. Probably a lot duller. But our young people here seem to like it well enough. 90% of them graduated from high school, settled down right here to live, even when they've been away to college.
Now, is there anyone in the audience who would like to ask Mr. Webb anything about the town?
Is there much drinking in Grover's Corners?
Well, ma'am, I don't know what you'd call much. Saturday nights, the farm hands meet down at Elliott Greenhouse Stable and holla some. We've got 1 or 2 town drunks, but they're always having remorses every time an evangelist comes to town. No, ma'am, I'd say liquor ain't a regular thing in the home here, except to the medicine chest. Right good for snake bite, you know, always was.
Is there no one in the town?
Come forward where we can hear you, will you? What were you saying?
Is there no one in the town aware of social injustice and industrial inequality?
Oh yes, everybody is. Something terrible. Seems like they spend most of their time talking about who's rich and who's poor.
Well, then why don't they do something about it?
Well, I don't know. I guess we're all hunting for a way the diligent and sensible can rise to the top, and the lazy and quarrelsome can sink to the bottom. But it ain't easy to find. Meanwhile, we do all we can to help those that can't help themselves, and those that can, we leave alone. Are there any other questions?
Is there any culture and love of beauty in Grover's Corners?
Well, ma'am, there ain't much. So what sense do you mean? Come to think of it, there are some girls that play piano at high school commencement, but they ain't happy about it. No, ma'am, there isn't much culture. But maybe this is the place to tell you that we've got a lot of pleasures of a kind here. We like the sun coming up over the mountain in the morning, and we all pay a good deal of attention to the birds. We know it's a good deal about them. And we watch the change of the seasons. But those other things, you're right, ma'am. There ain't much. Robinson Crusoe, and the Bible, and Handel's Argo, we all know that. And Whistler's Mother. Those are just about as far as we go.
So I thought. Thank you, Mr. Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Now, we'll go back to the town. It's early afternoon. All 2,642 have had their dinners, and all the dishes have been washed. There's an early afternoon calm in our town. A buzzing and a humming from the school buildings. Only a few buggies on Main Street. Horses dozing at the hitching posts. You remember how it is. Doc Gibbs is in his office tapping people and making them say, ah. Mr. Webb's cutting his grass over there. 1 man in 10 thinks it's a privilege to push his own lawnmower. No, sir, it's later than I thought. There are the children coming home from school already.
I can't, Lois. I've got to go home and tell my mother. I promise. Goodbye.
Emily, walk simply. Who do you think you are today?
Papa, you're terrible. 1 minute you tell me to stand up straight, and next you call me names. I just don't listen to you.
Golly! I never got a kiss from such a great lady before.
Excuse me, Mrs. Forrest. Go out and play in the fields, young man. You've got no business playing ball on Main Street. Awfully sorry, Mrs. Forrest. Hello, Emily.
Hello.
You made a fine speech in class today, Emily.
Well, I was really ready to make a speech about the Monroe Doctrine, but at last minute Miss Corcoran made me talk about Louisiana Purchase instead. I worked an awful long time on both of them.
Gee, it's funny, Emily. From my window, I can just see your head nuts when you're doing your homework over in your room.
Why can't you?
You sure know how to stick to it, Emily. I don't see you can sit still for that long. But I guess you just like school.
Well, I figure it's something you always have to go through.
Yeah.
I don't mind it really. It passes the time.
Yeah. Emily, what do you think? We could work out a telegraph from your window to mine. And once in a while, you could give me a hint or two about one of the algebra problems. I don't mean the answers, Emily. Of course not. Just some little hint.
Oh, I think hints are allowed. So if you get stuck, George, you whistle me and I'll give you some hints.
Emily, you're just naturally bright, I guess.
I figure that's just the way a person's born.
Yeah. But you see, I want to be a farmer. And my Uncle Luke says that when I'm ready, I can come over and work on his farm. And if I'm any good at it, I can just gradually have it.
You mean the house and everything?
Yeah. Well, thanks. I'd better be getting over to the baseball field now. Thanks for talking, Emily. Good afternoon, Mrs. Webb.
Good afternoon, George.
So long, Emily.
So long, George.
Emily, come and help me string some of these beans for the winter. George Gibbs really let himself have a real conversation, didn't he? Why, he's growing up. How old would George be?
I don't know.
He must be almost 16.
Mama, I made a speech in class today and I was very good.
You must recite it to your father at supper. What was it about?
The Louisiana Purchase. It was like silk off a spool. I'm gonna make speeches all my life. Mama, are these big enough?
Try and get them a little bigger if you can.
Mama, will you answer me a question? Serious?
Seriously, dear, not serious.
Seriously? Will you?
Of course I will.
Mama, am I good looking?
Of course you are. All my children have good features. I'd be ashamed if they had it.
Mama, that's not what I mean. What I mean is, am I pretty?
I've already told you yes. You have a nice, pretty young face, and I've never heard of such foolishness.
Oh, Mama, you never tell the truth about anything.
I am telling you the truth.
Mama, were you pretty?
Yes, I was, if I do say so. I was the prettiest girl in town next to Mammy Cartwright.
But Mama, you've got to say something about me. Am I pretty enough to get anybody, to get people interested in me?
Emily, you're making me tired. Now stop it. You're pretty enough for all normal purposes. And come along and bring that bowl with you.
Oh, Mama, you're no help at all.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you very much. We'll have to interrupt again here. Thank you, Mrs. Webb. Thank you, Emily. Now, before we move on, we want to have a little more information about the town. I think this would be a good time to tell you that Cartwright Industries have just begun building a new bank in Grover's Corners. Had to go to Vermont for the marble, sorry to say. And they've asked a friend of mine what they should put in the cornerstone for people to dig up 1,000 years from now. Of course, we're putting in a copy of the New York Times and a copy of Mr. Webb's Sentinel. We're kind of interested in this because some scientific fellas had developed a way of painting all that reading matter with a glue, a silicate glue, that'll make it keep 1,000, 2,000 years. We're putting in the Bible, the Constitution of the United States, some copies of William Shakespeare's plays. What do you say, folks? What do you think? You know, Babylon once had 2 million people in it, and all we know about him is the name of the kings, and some copies of wheat contracts, and contracts to the sales of slaves. Yet every night, all those families sat down to supper, and the father came home from work, and the smoke went up from the chimney, same as here. And even in Greece and Rome, all we know about the real life of the people is what we can piece together from the joking poems and comedies they wrote for the theater back then. So I'm going to put a copy of this play in the cornerstone, so that the people 1,000 years from now will know a few simple facts about us. More than the Treaty of Versailles and the Lindbergh flight. See what I mean? So, people 1,000 years from now, this is the way we were in the provinces north of New York at the beginning of the 20th century. This is the way we were in our growing up, and then our marrying, and then our living, and then our dying. Well, quite some time's passed. You can hear choir practice going on in the Congregational Church. The children are at home doing the schoolwork. The day's running down like a tired clock.
Now look here, everybody. Music's come into the world to give pleasure. Softer, softer. Get it down to your heads that music's only good when it's loud. You leave the loudness to the Methodists. You couldn't beat them, even if you wanted to. Now again.
Emily.
Hello.
Hello.
I can't work at all. The moonlight's so terrible.
Emily, did you get the third problem?
Which?
The third?
Why, yes, George. That's the easiest of them all.
I don't see it. Emily, can you give me a hint?
I'll tell you one thing. The answer's in yards.
In yards? How do you mean?
In square yards.
Oh, square yards.
Yes, George. Don't you see? In square yards of wallpaper.
Wallpaper. Oh, I see it. Thanks, Emily.
You're welcome. My, isn't the moonlight terrible? And choir practice going on? I bet if you hold your breath, you can hear the train all the way to Conticook. Hear it?
What do you know?
Well, I guess I better go back and try to work.
Good night, Emily, and thanks.
Good night, George.
Now, before I forget it, how many of you will be able to come in Thursday afternoon to sing at Fred Hersey's wedding? Show your hands. That'll be fine. That'll be right nice. Now we'll do Art Thou Weary, Art Thou Languid. It's a question, ladies and gentlemen. Make it talk.
Oh, George, could you come down a minute?
Yes, Pa.
Make yourself comfortable, George. I'll only keep you a minute. George, how old are you?
I'm 16, almost 17.
And what do you want to do after school is over?
Why, you know, Pa. I want to be a farmer in Uncle Luke's land.
And you'll be willing, will you, to get up early to milk and feed the stock? And you'll be able to hoe and hay all day?
Sure, I will. What do you mean, Pa?
Well, George, while I was in my office today, I heard a funny sound. And what do you think it was? It was your mother out in the back chopping wood. There you see your mother getting up early, cooking meals all day, washing and ironing, and she still has to go out in the back and chop some wood. I suppose she just got tired of asking you. She gave up and decided it was easier to do it herself. And you eat her meals and put on the clothes she keeps nice for you. And you run out and play baseball like she's some hired girl we keep around the house, but that we don't like very much. Well, George, I know all I had to do was draw your attention to it. Here's a handkerchief, son. George, I've decided to spending money 25 cents a week. Not, of course, for chopping wood for your mother, because that's a gift you give her, but because you're getting older, and I imagine there are lots of things you must find to do with it.
Thanks, Pa.
Let's see. Tomorrow's your payday. You can count on it. Probably Rebecca will feel she ought to have some more too. Wonder what could have happened to your mother. Choir practice never was as late as this before.
It's only 8:30, Pa.
I don't know why she's in that old choir. She hasn't got any more of a voice than an old crow. Traipsing around the streets at this hour of the night. Just about time you retired, don't you think?
Yes, Pa.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night, Martha. Good night, Mr. Foster. I'll tell Mr. Webb. I know he'll want to put it in the paper.
My, it's late.
Good night, Irma.
Real nice choir practice, wasn't it? Now, Myrtle Webb, will you look at that moon? Potato weather for sure.
Naturally, I didn't want to say a word about it in front of those others. But now we're alone. Really, it's the worst scandal that ever was in this town.
What?
Simon Stimson.
Now, Luella.
But Julia, to have the organist of a church drink and drunk year after year, you know he was drunk tonight.
Now, Luella, we all know Mr. Simpson, and we all know the troubles he's been through. And Dr. Ferguson knows it too. And if Dr. Ferguson keeps him there at his job, the only thing the rest of us can do is just not to notice it.
Not to notice it, but it's getting worse.
No, it isn't. I've been in that choir twice as long as you have. It's nowhere near as bad. My, I hate to go to bed on a night like this. I better hurry. Those children will be up till all hours. Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night, Luella. Can you get home safe, Luella?
It's bright as day. I can see Mr. Stone scowling at the window now. We think we've been to a dance, so we men folk carry on.
Good night. Well, we had a real nice time tonight.
You're late enough.
Tain't any later than usual.
And you stopping at the corner to gossip with a lot of hens.
Now, Frank, don't be grouchy. Come and smell the heliotrope in the moonlight with me. My, isn't it wonderful? What did you do while I was away?
I read as usual. What were the girls gossiping about tonight?
Now, Frank, it was something to gossip about.
Simon Stimson far gone, was he?
Worst I've ever seen him. How do you think that end, Frank? Dr. Ferguson can't forgive him forever.
I guess I know more about Simon Stimson's affairs than anybody in this town. Some people ain't made for small town life. I don't know how that'll end, but there's nothing we can do but leave it alone. Come get in.
No, not yet. Frank, I'm worried about you.
Oh, what are you worried about?
I think it's my duty to make plans for you, to get a real rest and change. And if I get that legacy, well, I'm going to insist on it.
Now, Julia, there's no sense in going over that again.
Frank, you're just unreasonable.
Come on, Julia. It's getting late. First thing you know, you'll catch cold. I gave George a piece of my mind tonight. I reckon you ought to have your wood chopped for you. For a while, anymore. No, start heading upstairs.
Oh dear, looks like there's always so much to pick up. You know, Mrs. Fairchild always locks her front door at this time of night. All those people out of that part of town do.
They're getting too citified. That's the trouble with them. They haven't got nothing fit to burgle, and everybody knows it.
Get out of here, Rebecca. There's only room for one at this window. You're always spoiling everything.
Let me look just a minute.
Use your own window.
I did, but there's no moon there. George, do you know what I think? I think the moon is getting nearer and nearer, and soon there'll be a big explosion.
Rebecca, you don't know anything. If the moon were getting nearer, the guys that sit up all night with the telescopes would see it first, and then tell us about it. It'd be in all the newspapers.
George, is the moon shining over South America, Canada, and half the whole world?
Well, probably is. "9:30. Most of the lights are off in town. No, there's Constable Warren trying a few doors on Main Street. And here comes Mr. Webb after putting his newspaper to bed. Good evening, Bill.
Good evening, Mr. Webb.
Quite a moon.
Yep.
All quiet tonight?
Simon Stimson is rolling around a bit. Just saw his wife moving out to hunt for him, so I went the other way. Oh, there he is now.
Good evening, Simon. Town seems to have settled down for the night pretty well. Good evening, Simon. Yes, most of the town settled down for the night, Simon. I guess we better do the same. Can I walk along a ways with you? Good night.
I don't know how that's going to end, Mr. Webb.
Well, you've seen a peck of trouble. One thing after another. Oh, Bill, if you see my boy smoking cigarettes, just give him a word, will you? He thinks a lot of you, Bill.
I don't think he smokes no cigarettes. Leastways not more than 2 or 3 a year.
I hope not. Well, good night, Bill.
Not Mr. Webb.
Who's that there? Is that you, Myrtle?
No, it's me, Papa.
Why aren't you in bed?
I don't know. I just can't sleep yet, Papa. The moonlight's so wonderful. And the smell of Mrs. Gibbs' heliotrope. Can you smell it?
Yes. Haven't any troubles on your mind, have you, Emily?
Troubles, Papa? No.
Well, enjoy yourself. Don't let your mother catch you. Good night, Emily.
Good night, Papa.
I never told you about that letter Jane Cruffett got from a minister when she was sick. He wrote her a letter, and on the envelope, the address was like this. Jane Cruffett, Cruffett Farm, Grover's Corners, Sutton County, New Hampshire, United States of America.
What's funny about that?
Well, listen, it's not finished. The United States of America, North America, the Western Hemisphere, the Earth, the solar system, the universe, the mind of God. That's what it said on the envelope.
What do you know?
And the postman brought it, just the same.
What do you know? That's the end of the first act, friends. You can go smoke now. Those that smoke. Yes. The sun's come up over 1,000 times. Summers and winters have cracked the mountains, and the rain has brought down some of the dirt. Some babies that weren't even born before have begun talking regular sentences already. And a number of people who thought they were right young and spry have found that they can't bound up a flight of stairs the way they used to. All that can happen in 1,000 days. Nature's been pushing and contriving in other ways too. A number of young people fell in love and got married. Yes, the mountain's been bit away a few fractions of an inch. Millions of gallons of water went by the mill, and here and there a new home was set up under a roof. Most everybody in the world gets married. You know what I mean? In our town, there are hardly any exceptions. Most everybody climbs into their graves married. The first act was called Daily Life. This act is called Love and Marriage. There's another act coming after this. I reckon you can guess what that's about. So, it's 3 years later. It's 1904. It's July 7th, just after the high school commencement. That's a time when most of our young people jump up and get married. Seems like once they've finally passed their final examinations in solid geometries and Cicero's orations, they suddenly see themselves fit to be married. It's early morning, only this time it's been raining. It's been pouring and thundering. Mrs. Gibbs' garden and Mrs. Webb's here, drenched. All the bean poles and pea vines, drenched. All yesterday along Main Street, the rain looked like curtains being blown along. Looks like it may begin again at any minute. There, you can hear the 5:45 for Boston. And here's Mrs. Gibbs and Mrs. Webb coming downstairs to get breakfast just like it was an ordinary day. I don't have to tell the woman in my audience that those two ladies they see before them, both of those ladies, cook 3 meals a day, one for 20 years, the other for 40, no summer vacation. They raised 2 children apiece, washed, cleaned the house, and never a nervous breakdown. It's like what one of those Middle West poets once said. You've got to love life to have life. You've got to have life to love life. It's what they call a vicious circle.
Get up, Bessie.
Here comes Howie Newsom delivering the milk. And here's Cy Crowell delivering the paper like her brother before him.
Morning, Howie.
Morning, Cy. Anything in the papers I ought to know?
Nothing much, except we're losing about the best baseball pitcher Grover's Corners ever had, George Gibbs.
Reckon he is.
He could hit and run bases too.
Yep, mighty fine ball player. Whoa, Bessie! I guess I could stop and talk if I have a mind to.
I don't see how we can give up a thing like that just to get married. Would you, Howie?
Can't tell, Cy. Never had no talent that way. You're up early, Bill.
Just seeing if there's anything I can do to prevent a flood. That river's been rising all night.
Cy Crowell's all worked up about George Gibbs retiring from baseball.
Yes, that's the way it goes. Back in '84, we had a player, saw even George Gibbs couldn't touch him, name of Hank Todd. He went out in Maine to become a parson. Wonderful ball player. Howie, how does this weather look to you?
It ain't bad. I think it'll clear up for good.
Morning, Howie.
Morning, Mrs. Gibbs.
Do you think it'll rain today?
I think it rained so heavy I think it'll clear up. How much do you want today?
Well, I'll have a household of relations. Looks to me like I'll need 3 milk and 2 cream.
Morning, Mrs. Webb.
Morning, Howie. I told you 4 quarts of milk, but I hope you could spare me another.
Yes, ma'am. And the 2 cream?
Will it start raining again, Mr. Newsom?
Well, just as I was telling Mrs. Gibbs how to lighten up. My wife says to tell me that we both hope they'll be happy.
Well,
No, they will.
Thank you, and thank Mrs. Newsom for me. We're counting on seeing you at the wedding.
We'll be there. We can't miss that. Come on, Bessie.
Well, Ma, the day has come. You're losing one of your chicks.
Frank, don't you say another word. I feel like crying every minute. Sit down, drink your coffee.
The groom's up shaving himself. Only there ain't an awful lot to shave. Whistling and singing like he's glad to leave us. Every now and then, he says, "I do," to the mirror. But it don't sound convincing to me.
I declare, Frank, I don't know how they'll get along. I've arranged his clothes, seen to it he's put warm things on. Frank, they're too young. Emily won't think of such things. He'll catch his death of cold within a week.
I was remembering my wedding morning, Julia.
Now don't start that, Frank Gibbs.
I was the scaredest young fella in the state of New Hampshire. I thought I'd make a mistake for sure. When I saw you coming down that aisle, I thought you were the prettiest girl I'd ever seen. The only trouble was, I'd never seen you before. There I was in the Congregational Church, marrying a total stranger.
How do you think I felt? Frank, weddings are perfectly awful things. Farces. That's what they are. Here, I've made something for you.
Why, Julia Hersey, French toast.
Tain't hard to make, and I had to do something.
How'd you sleep last night, Julia?
Well, I heard a lot of the hours struck off.
Yes. I get a shock every time I think of George setting out to be a family man. That great gangling thing. I tell you, Julia, there's nothing so terrifying in the world as a son. Relationship of father and son is the darndest, awkwardest.
Well, mother and daughter's no picnic, let me tell you.
They'll have a lot of troubles, I suppose, but that's none of our business. Everybody has a right to their own troubles.
Yes, people in life are meant to go 2 by 2. Tain't natural to be lonesome.
Julia, do you know one of the things I was afraid of when I married you?
I'll go along with you.
I was afraid we wouldn't have material for conversation more than last us a few weeks. Well, you and I have been conversing 20 years now with no noticeable barren spells.
Well, good weather, bad weather, tain't very choice, but I always found something to say. Did you hear Rebecca stirring around upstairs?
No. Only day of the year Rebecca hasn't been up there managing everybody's business.
For Lord's sake, this has got to stop. Rebecca! Rebecca! Come and eat your breakfast!
Morning, everybody. Only 5 more hours to live.
George Gibbs, where do you think you're going?
Just stepping across the grass to see my girl.
George, you put on your overshoes. It's raining torrents out there. And I won't let you go out of this house unless you're prepared for it.
Come on, it's just a step.
George, you'll catch your death of cold and cough all through the service.
George, do as your mother tells you.
From tomorrow on, you can kill yourself in all kinds of weather. But while you're in my house, you live wisely. Thank you. Maybe Mrs. Webb isn't used to callers in the morning. Here, take a cup of coffee first.
Back in a minute. Morning, Mother Webb.
Goodness, you frightened me. Now, George, you can come in a minute out of the wet, but you know I can't ask you in.
Why not?
George, you know as well as I do, the groom can't see his bride on the day of his wedding, not before he sees her in church.
That's just a superstition. Morning, Mr. Webb.
Good morning, George.
Mr. Webb, you don't believe in that superstition, do you?
There's a lot of common sense in some superstitions, George.
Millions have followed it, and I won't have you be the first to fall into the face of custom.
How's Emily?
Haven't heard a sound of her. She's not up yet.
Emily's asleep.
No wonder. We were up till all hours sewing and packing. I'll tell you what I'll do. You sit down here a minute with Mr. Webb and take this cup of coffee. I'll go upstairs and see if she doesn't come down and surprise you. There's some bacon too, but don't be too long about it.
Well, George, how are you?
I'm fine. I'm fine. Mr. Webb, what sense could there be in a superstition like that?
Well, you see, on her wedding morning, a girl's head is apt to be full of clothes and one thing and another. Don't you think that's probably it?
Yes. I never thought of that.
A girl ought to be a night nurse on her wedding day.
I just wish a fella could get married without all that marching up and down.
Every man that's ever lived has felt that way about it, George. But it hasn't been any use. It's the women folk who've built up weddings, my boy. For a while now, the women have it all their own. A man looks pretty small at a wedding. All those good women standing shoulder to shoulder, making sure that the knot's tied in a mighty public way.
But you believe in it, don't you, Mr. Webb?
Oh yes. Oh yes. Don't you misunderstand me, my boy. Marriage is a wonderful thing. Wonderful thing. And don't you forget that, George.
No, sir. Mr. Webb, how old were you when you got married?
Well, you see, I'd been to college, and I'd taken some time to get settled. But Mrs. Webb, she wasn't much older than what Emily is. Oh, age hasn't much to do with it, George. Not compared with, other things.
What were you going to say, Mr. Webb?
I don't know, George. Was I going to say something? George, I was thinking the other night on some advice my father gave me when I got married. Charles, he said, Charles, start early, showing who's boss. The best thing to do is to give an order, even if it don't make sense, just so you learn to obey. And he said, if anything about your wife irritates you, her conversation, or anything, just get up and leave the house. That'll make it clear to her, he said. And oh yes, he said never let your wife know how much money you have. Never.
But, Mr. Webb, I don't think I could...
And I took the opposite of my father's advice. And I've been happy ever since. And let that be a lesson to you, George. To never ask advice on personal matters. George, are you going to raise chickens on your farm?
What?
Are you going to raise chickens on your farm?
Well, Uncle Luke's never been much interested.
A book came into my office the other day on the philo system of raising chickens. I want you to read it. I was thinking of beginning in a small way in the backyard. I'm going to put an incubator in the cellar.
Charles, are you talking about that old incubator again? I thought you two would have things worthwhile to talk about.
Well, Myrtle, if you want to give the boy some good advice, I'll go upstairs and leave you alone with him.
Now, George, Emily's got to come downstairs and eat her breakfast. She sends you her love, but she doesn't want to see you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Myrtle, I guess you don't know about that older superstition.
What do you mean, Charles?
Since the cavemen, no bridegroom should see his father-in-law on the day of the wedding or near it. Now remember that.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Webb. Thank you very much. Now we'll have to interrupt again here. You see, we want to know how all this began. This wedding. This plan to spend a lifetime together. I'm awfully interested in how big things like this begin. You know how it is. You're 21 or 22, you make some decisions, then you're 70. You've been a lawyer for 50 years. And that white-haired lady at your side has eaten over 50,000 meals with you. How do such things begin? George and Emily are going to show you now the conversation they had when they first realized that as the saying goes, they were meant for one another. But before they do, I want you to remember what it was like to have been very young, and particularly the days when you were first in love, when you were like a person sleepwalking, and you didn't quite see the street you were in, and didn't quite hear everything that was said to you. You're just a little bit crazy. Would you remember that, please? Now, they'll be coming out of the high school at 3 o'clock. George has just been elected president of the junior class, and as it's June, that means he'll be president of the senior class all next year. Emily's just been elected secretary and treasurer. I don't have to tell you how important that is. Yep, here they are coming down Main Street now.
I can't, Luis. I've got to go home. Goodbye.
Bye,
Oh, Ernestine, can you come over tonight and do Latin? Isn't that sister the worst thing?
Yes, it is.
Tell your mother you have to. Goodbye. Goodbye, Helen. Goodbye, Fred.
See you tomorrow.
Can I carry your books home for you, Emily?
Why, thank you. It isn't far.
Excuse me a moment, Emily. Say, Bob, if I'm a little late, start practice anyway. And give her some long, high ones.
Goodbye, Lizzie.
Goodbye, Lizzie. I'm awful glad you were elected too, Emily.
Thank you.
Emily, why are you mad at me?
I'm not mad at you.
You've been treating me so funny lately.
Well, since you asked me, George,
I might as well say it. Goodbye, Miss Corcoran. Right out.
Goodbye, Miss Corcoran. What is it?
I don't like the whole change that's come over you in the past year. I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, but I've got to tell the truth and shame the devil.
A change? What do you mean?
Well, up until a year ago, I used to like you a lot. And I used to watch you as you did everything because we'd been friends for so long. But then you began spending all your time at baseball, and you never stopped to speak to anybody anymore. Not even your own family you didn't. And George, it's a fact, you got awful conceited and stuck up, and all the girls say so. They may not so say so to your face, but that's what they say about you behind your back. And it hurts me to hear them say it, but I've got to agree with them just a little. Now I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, but I can't be sorry I said it.
I'm glad you said it, Emily. I never realized that such a thing was happening to me. I guess it's kind of hard for a fella to not have faults creep into his character.
Well, I always expect a man to be perfect, and I think he should be.
I don't think it's possible to be perfect, Emily.
Well, my father is, and as far as I can see, your father is. So there's no reason on earth why you shouldn't be too.
I think it's the other way around. That men aren't naturally perfect, but girls are.
Well, you should know right now that I'm not perfect. It's not easy for a girl to be as perfect as a man, because we girls are more nervous. Now, I'm sorry I said all that about you. I don't know how to say it.
Emily,
and I suddenly feel it's not the truth at all, and it isn't important anyway.
Emily, would you like an ice cream soda or something before you go home?
Why? Thank you. I would.
Hello, Stu. How are you? Good afternoon, Mrs. Slocum.
Hello, George. Hello, Emily. What can I get you? Why, Emily Webb? What have you been crying about?
She just got an awful scare, Mr. Morgan. She almost got run over by the hardware store wagon. Everybody says Tom Hawkins drives like a crazy man.
Well, no, Emily, you take a drink of water. You look all shook up. I tell you, you gotta look both ways before you cross Main Street these days. Gets worse every year. What do you have?
I'll have a strawberry phosphate. Thank you, Mr. Morgan.
No. Have an ice cream soda with me, Emily. 2 strawberry ice cream sodas, Mr. Morgan.
2 strawberry ice cream sodas. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. There's 125 horses in Grover's Corners this minute that I'm talking to you. State inspector was here yesterday. And now they're bringing in all these automobiles. And the best thing to do is to just stay home. Why, I remember when a dog could sleep the whole day in the middle of Main Street and nothing come along to bother him. Well, there they are. Enjoy them. Yes, Mrs. Rigby, what can I do for you?
They're so expensive.
No, don't you think of that. We're celebrating our election. And do you know what else I'm celebrating?
No.
I'm celebrating because I've got a friend who tells me all the things that ought to be told me.
George, please don't think of that. I don't know what made me say it. It's not true.
No, you stick to it, Emily. I'm glad you spoke to me like you did. But you'll see, I'm gonna change so quick. You bet I'm gonna change. And, Emily, I wanna ask you a favor.
What?
Emily, if I do go to State Agricultural College next year, will you write me a letter once in a while?
I certainly will. I certainly will, George. It certainly seems being away 3 years, you'd get out of touch with things. Maybe letters from Grover's Corners wouldn't be so interesting after a while. Grover's Corners isn't a very important place when you think of all New Hampshire, but I think it's a very nice town.
The day wouldn't come when I wouldn't want to know everything that's happening here. I know that's true, Emily.
Well, I'll try to make my letters interesting then.
You know, Emily, whenever I meet a farmer, I ask him if he thinks it's important to go to agricultural school, to be a good farmer.
Why, George?
Yeah. And some say it's even a waste of time. You can get all those things anyway, out of the pamphlets the government sends out. And Uncle Luke's getting old. He's about ready for me to start and taking over his farm. Tomorrow if I could.
My.
And, like you say, being gone all that time, in other places and meeting other people, Gosh, if anything like that can happen, I don't want to go away. I guess new people aren't any better than old ones. I'll bet they almost never are. Emily, I feel that you're as good a friend as I've got. I don't have to go and meet the people in other towns.
But George, maybe it's very important for you to go learn about cattle judging and soils and those things. Of course, I don't know.
Emily, I'm going to make up my mind right now. I won't go. I'll tell Pa about it tonight.
But George, I don't see why you have to decide right now. It's a whole year away.
Listen, Emily, I'm glad you spoke to me about that fault in my character. What you said was right, but there was one thing wrong in it. And that's when you said that for a year, I wasn't noticing people. And you, for instance, why, you say you were watching me as I did everything. I was doing the same thing about you all the time. Why, sure, I always thought of you as one of the chief people I thought about. I always made sure where you were sitting on the bleachers and who you were with, and for 3 days now, I've been trying to walk home with you. But something always got in the way. Yesterday, I was standing against the wall waiting for you, and you walked home with Miss Corcoran.
George, life's awful funny. How could I have known that? Why, I thought...
Listen, Emily, I'm going to tell you why I'm not going to agricultural school. I think that once you find a person that you're very fond of, I mean, a person who's fond of you too, and likes you enough to be interested in your character, why, I think that's just as important as college, and even more so. That's what I think.
I think it's awfully important too.
Emily?
Yes, George?
Emily, if I do improve and make a big change, would you be, could you be?
I am now. I always have been.
So, I guess this is an important talk we've been having.
Yes. Yes.
Wait just a minute, and I'll walk you home. Mr. Morgan? I'll have to go home and get the money to pay for this. It'll only take me a minute.
What's that? George Gibbs, you don't mean to tell me...
Yes, but I had reasons, Mr. Morgan. Look, here's my silver watch to keep until I come back with the money.
That's all right, George. You keep your watch. I trust you.
I'll be back in 5 minutes.
I'll trust you 10 years, George. Not a day over. Got all over your shock, Emily?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Morgan. It was nothing.
I'm ready.
Well, now we're ready to get on with the wedding. There's a lot of things that can be said about a wedding. There are a lot of thoughts that go on during a wedding. We can't get them all into one wedding naturally, and especially not a wedding at Grover's Corners. Well, they're awfully plain and short. In this wedding, I play the minister. That gives me the right to say a few more things about it. For a while now, this play gets pretty serious. You see, some churches say that marriage is a sacrament. Now, I don't quite know what that means, but I can guess. It's like what Mrs. Gibbs said a few moments ago. People were made to live 2 by 2. This is a good wedding. But even at a good wedding, there's a lot of confusion way down deep in people's minds. And we thought that ought to be in our play too. The real hero of the scene isn't even on stage at all, and you know who that is. It's like what one of those European fellows once said. Every child born into this world is nature's attempt to make a perfect human being. Well, we've seen nature pushing and contriving for some time now. We all know she's interested in quantity, but I think she's interested in quality too. That's why I'm in the ministry. And don't forget all the other witnesses to this wedding. The ancestors. Millions of them. Most of them set out to live 2 by 2 also. Millions of them. Well, that's my sermon. Wasn't very long anyway.
I don't know why on earth I should be crying. I suppose there's nothing to cry about. It came over me at breakfast this morning. There was Emily, eating her breakfast, as she'd done for 17 years now. And now she's going off to eat it in someone else's house. I suppose that's it. And Emily, she suddenly said, "I can't eat another mouthful." And she put her head at the table, and she cried. Oh, I've got to say it. There's something downright cruel about sending our girls into marriage like this. I hope one of her girlfriends had told her a thing or two. It's cruel, I know, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I went into it blind as a bat myself. The whole world's wrong. That's what's the matter. Here they come.
Hey, George. Yes, now, look at him, fellas. He looks scared to death.
Hey, George, don't look so innocent, you old geezer. We know what you're thinking.
Don't disgrace the team, big boy.
All right, that'll do. That's enough of that. All right. There was a lot of that stuff in the old days. Roman later. We're more civilized now. So they say.
George, what's the matter?
Ma, I don't want to grow old. Why is everybody pushing me so?
Why, George, you wanted it.
No, Ma, listen to me.
No, George, you're a man now.
Listen, Ma, for the last time I ask you, all I want is to be a fella.
George, if anyone should hear you, stop it. What? I'm ashamed of you.
Where's Emily?
Oh, George, you gave me such a turn.
Cheer up, Ma, I'm getting married.
Let me catch my breath a minute.
Now, Ma, you say Thursday nights. Emily and I are coming out to dinner every Thursday night. You'll see. Ma, what are you crying for? Come on, we gotta get ready for this.
I never felt so alone in my whole life. And George over there looking so... I hate him. I wish I were dead. Papa!
Emily! Now don't get upset.
But Papa, I don't want to get married.
Hush, everything's all right.
Why can't I just stay well just as I am? Let's go away.
No, now stop and take a minute.
But Papa, don't you remember what you used to say? All the time, you used to say, all the time, that I was your girl. There could be lots of places we'd go to. I could work for you. I could keep house.
Hush, you must not think of such things. George, will you come here a minute? Why, you're marrying the best young fellow in the world. George is a fine fellow.
Papa.
George, I'm giving away my daughter. Do you think you can take care of her?
Mr. Webb, I want to try. Emily, I'm going to do my best. I love you, Emily. I need you.
Well, if you love me, help me. All I want is someone to love me.
I will, Emily. Emily, I'll try.
I mean forever. Do you hear me? Forever and ever.
Come quick, they're waiting for us. We'll do it right. Come.
Do you, George, take this woman, Emily, to be your wedded wife?
Perfectly lovely wedding. Loveliest wedding I ever saw. Oh, I do love a good wedding, don't you? Doesn't she make a lovely bride?
I do. And do you, Emily, take this man, George, to be your wedded
Don't know
husband?
when I've been to such a nice wedding, but I always cry. Don't know why it is, but I always cry. I just like to see young people happy, don't you? Oh, I think it's lovely.
I've married over 200 couples in my day. Do I believe in it? I don't know. M. Mary Zen, millions of them. The cottage, the go-kart, the Sunday afternoon drives in the Ford, the first rheumatism, the grandchildren, the second rheumatism, the deathbed, the reading of the will. Once in 1,000 times, it's interesting. Well, let's have Mendelssohn's Wedding March.
Aren't they a lovely couple? Well, I've never been to such a nice wedding. I always say, I'm sure they'll be happy. I always say, happiness, that's the great thing. The important thing is to be happy.
That's the end of the second act, friends. 5 minutes intermission. This time, 9 years have gone by, friends. Summer, 1913. Gradual changes in Grover's Corners. Horses are getting rarer. Farmers coming into town now in Fords. Everybody locks their house doors at night. Ain't been any burglars yet, but everybody's heard about 'em. You'd be surprised though. On the whole, nothing changes very much around here. This certainly is an important part of Grover's Corners. It's on a hilltop, a windy hilltop. Lots of sky and clouds, often lots of sun and moon and stars. You come up here on a fine afternoon and see range on range of hilltops. Awful blue they are, up there by Lake Sinope and Lake Winnipesaukee. And way up, if you've got a glass, are the White Mountains and Mount Washington, where North Conway and Conway is. And of course, our favorite mountain, Mount Monadnock, is right here, and all these towns that lie around it. Jaffrey and East Jaffrey, Peterborough and Dublin. And there, quite a ways down, is Grover's Corners. Yes, beautiful spot up here. Lots of mountain laurel and lilacs. I often wonder why people like to be buried in Brooklyn and Woodlawn when they could pass the same amount of time up here in New Hampshire. Over there are the Old Stones, 1670 to 1680. Strong-minded people who've come a long way to be independent. Summer, people walk along there, laughing at the funny words on the gravestones. It don't do any harm. Genealogists come up from Boston, get paid by city people for looking up their ancestors. Want to be sure their daughters of the American Revolution and the Mayflower. It don't do any harm either. Over here are some Civil War veterans, iron flags in their graves. New Hampshire boys. Had a notion that the Union ought to be kept independent, though they'd never seen more than 50 miles of it themselves. All they knew was the name, friends. The United States of America. The United States of America. And they went and died about it. This is the new part of the cemetery. Here's your friend Mrs. Gibbs, and Simon Stimson, the organist at the Congregational Church, and Mrs. Soames, who enjoyed the wedding cell. You remember? Oh, and lots of others. And Editor Webb's boy, Wallace, whose appendix burst on a Boy Scout trip to Crawford Notch. Yes, an awful lot of sorrow has sort of quieted away up here. People just wild with grief have brought their ancestors up to this hill. And then time, sunny days, rainy days, and snow. We're all glad they're in a beautiful spot. We're coming up here ourselves when our fit's over. Now there are some things that we all know, but we don't take them out and look at them very often. We all know that something is eternal. And it ain't homes, and it ain't names, and it ain't the earth, and it ain't even the stars. Everybody knows in their bones that something is eternal. And that something has to do with human beings. All the greatest people that ever lived have been telling us that for the past 5,000 years. Yet you'd be surprised how often people are forgetting it. There's something that's eternal way down deep in every human. Now you all know as well as I do that the dead don't stay interested in us living people very long. Gradually, they lose their hold of the earth and the ambitions they had, and the pleasures they had, and the things they suffered, and the people they loved. You get weaned away from the earth. That's the way I put it. Weaned away. And they stay here. Well, the earth part of them gets burnt away. Gets burnt out. They're waiting. They're waiting for something that they can feel is something coming. Something great and important. Aren't they waiting for the eternal part of him to come out clear? Some of the things they're going to say maybe will hurt your feelings. Well, that's just the way it is. Mother and daughter, husband and wife, enemy and enemy, money and miser. All that terribly important stuff grows kind of pale around here. And what's left when your memory's gone and your identity, Mrs. Smith? Well, there are some living people, too. There's Joe Stoddard, the undertaker, supervising a newly made grave. And here comes the Grover's Corners girl, who left town to go out west.
Good afternoon, Joe Stoddard.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Let me see now. Do I know you?
I'm Sam Craig.
Gracious sakes of all people alive. I should have known you'd be back for the funeral. You've been away a long time, Sam.
Yes, I've been away over 12 years now. I was back east when I got news of my cousin's death, so I thought I'd combine things a little and come and see the old home. You look well.
Yes, can't complain. Very sad at your journey today. Very sad.
Yes.
Yes, I always say I hate to supervise when a young person's taken. I had to come early. They'll be here in a few minutes. My son's supervising at home.
Old Farmer McCarty. I used to do chores for him after school. He had the lumbago.
Yes, we brought Farmer McCarty here a number of years ago.
Why, this is my Aunt Julia. I'd forgotten that she'd... Of course.
Yes, Doc Gibbs lost his wife, too, 3 years ago about this time. And today's another pretty bad blow for him.
That's my sister Carrie's daughter, Samantha Craig.
I'm always uncomfortable when they're around.
Simon.
Do they choose their own verses much, Joe?
No, not usual. Mostly the bereaved pick a verse.
Doesn't sound like Aunt Julia. There aren't very many of those Hersey sisters left now. Let me see. I wanted to look at my father's and mother's.
Oh, over there with the Craigs. Avenue F.
He was the organist at church, wasn't he? Drank a lot, we used to say.
Yes, nobody was supposed to know about that, though. He'd seen a peck of trouble. Took his own life, you know.
Oh, did he?
Yes, they tried to hush it up, but of course it got around. He chose his own epitaph. As you can see there, it ain't a verse exactly.
Why, it's just some notes of music. What is it?
Oh, I wouldn't know. It was all wrote up in the Boston papers at the time.
Joe, what did she die of?
Who?
My cousin.
Oh, you didn't know? Had some trouble bringing a baby into the world. 'Twas her second, though. There's a little boy, about 4 years old.
Is Grace gonna be over there?
Yes, there ain't much more room over here among the Gibbses, so we're opening up a whole new Gibbs section over by Avenue B. But if you'll excuse me now, that I can see that they're coming.
Who is it, Julia?
My daughter-in-law, Emily Webb.
Well, I declare, the road up here must have been awful muddy. What did she die of, Julia?
Of childbirth.
Childbirth. I'd forgotten all about that. My, wasn't life awful and wonderful?
Wonderful, was it?
Simon, now remember.
I remember Emily's wedding. Wasn't it a lovely wedding? And I remember her reading the class poem at graduation exercises. Emily was one of the brightest girls that ever graduated high school. I've heard Principal Wilkins say so time after time. I called on them at their farm just before I died. Perfectly beautiful farm.
It's on the same road we lived on.
Yep, right smart farm.
I always liked that hymn. I was hoping they'd sing a hymn.
Hello. Hello, Emily. Hello, Mother Gibbs.
Emily.
Hello.
It's raining. Yes. They'll be gone soon, dear. Just rest yourself.
It seems thousands and thousands of years since I... Papa, remember that was my favorite hymn? Oh, I wish I'd been here a long time. I don't like being new here. How do you do, Mr. Stimson?
How do you do, Emily?
Mother Gibbs. George and I have made that farm into just the best place you ever saw. We've thought of you all the time. We want to show you the new barn and the great long cement drinking fountain for the stock. You bought that out of the money you left us.
I did?
Yes, Mother Gibbs, don't you remember? The legacy you left us? Why, it was over $350.
Yes, Emily.
Well, there's a patent device on the drinking fountain, so it never overflows, Mother Gibbs, and it never sinks below a certain mark they have there. It's fine. It won't be the same to George without me, but it's a lovely farm. A lot of people don't understand, do they?
No, dear, not very much.
They're sort of shut up in little boxes, aren't they? I feel as though I knew them last 1,000 years ago. My little boy spent a day at Mrs. Carter's. Oh, Mr. Carter, my little boy spent a day at your house.
Is he?
Yes, he loves it there. Mother Gibbs, we have a Ford too. Never gives any trouble. I don't drive though. Mother Gibbs, when does this feeling go away? Of being one of them? How long does it?
Shh, dear. Just wait and be patient.
I know. Look, they're finished. They're going. Look, Father Gibbs is bringing some of my flowers to you. He looks just like George, doesn't he? Oh, Mother Gibbs, I never realized how troubled, how in the dark live persons are. Look at him. I loved him so. From morning till night, that's all they are, troubled.
A little cooler than it was.
Yes, that rain's cooled it off a little. Those northeast winds always do the same thing, don't they? If it isn't a rain, it's a 3-day blow.
But Mother Gibbs, one could go back there into living again. I feel it. I know it. Why? Just then for a minute I was thinking about the farm. And for a minute I was there and my baby was on my lap as plain as day.
Yes, of course you can.
I can go back and live all those days over again. Why not?
All I can say is, Emily, don't.
But it's true, isn't it? I can go back there into living again.
Yes, some have tried, but they soon come back here.
Don't do it, Emily.
Emily, don't. It's not what you think it'd be.
But I won't live over a sad day. I'll choose a happy one. I'll choose the day that I first knew that I loved George. Why should that be painful?
You not only live it, you watch yourself living it.
Yes?
And as you watch yourself living it, you see what they down there never see. You see the future. You know what's going to happen afterwards.
But is that painful? Why?
That's not the only reason why you shouldn't do it, Emily. When you've been here longer, you see that our life here is to forget all that and to look for what's ahead and be ready for what's ahead. When you've been here longer, you'll understand.
Mother Gibbs, how can I ever forget that life? It's all I know. It's all I had.
Oh, Emily, it isn't wise. Really, it isn't.
But it's something I must know for myself. I'll choose a happy day anyway.
No. Choose an unimportant day. Choose the least important day. It will be important enough.
Then it can't be since I was married, or since the baby was born. I can choose a birthday, can't I? I choose my 12th birthday.
All right. February 11th, 1899. Want any particular time of day?
Oh, I want the whole day.
We'll begin at dawn. You remember, it had been snowing for several days, and it had stopped the night before. They'd just begun clearing the roads. The sun's coming up.
There's Main Street. Why, that's Mr. Morgan's drugstore before he changed it. And there's a livery stable.
Yes, it's 1899. This is 14 years ago.
Oh, that's the town I knew as a little girl. And there's the old white fence used to be around our house. Oh, I'd forgotten that. I love it so. Are they inside?
Yes, your mother will be coming downstairs in a minute to get breakfast.
Will she?
And you remember, your father had been away for several days. Came back on the early morning train.
No.
He went back to his college to make a speech in Western New York at Clinton.
Look, there's Howie Newsome. And there's our policeman. But he's dead. He died.
Whoa, Bessie! Bessie! Morning, Bill. Morning, Howie. You're up early.
Red rescued a party darn near froze to death down by Polish Town. Got drunk and lay out in the snowdrifts. Thought it was in bed when I shook him.
Why, there's Joe Krell.
Good morning, Mr. Warren. Morning, Howie. Children, Wally, Emily, time to get up.
Mama, I'm here. Oh, how young Mama looks. I didn't know Mama was ever that young.
You can come and dress by the kitchen fire if you'd like, but hurry. Oh, good morning, Mr. Newsome. Woo, it's cold.
10 down below by my barn, Mrs. Webb.
Think of it. Keep yourself wrapped up.
Mama, I can't find my blue hairband anywhere.
Just open your eyes, dear, that's all. I laid it out for you special on the dresser there. If it were a snake, it would bite you.
Yes. Yes.
Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Mr. Webb. You're up early.
Yes, just been back to my old college in New York State. Been any trouble here?
Well, I was called up this morning to rescue a Polish fella darn near froze to death.
We must get the paper.
Twain't much.
Papa.
Good morning, Mother.
How did it go, Charles?
Oh, fine, I guess. I told him a few things. Everything all right here?
Yes, can't think of anything that's happened special. Been right cold. Howie Newsome said it's 10 below over at his barn.
Yes, well, it's colder than that at Hamilton College. Students here are falling off. It ain't Christian. Paper have any mistakes in it?
None that I've noticed. Coffee's ready when you want it. Charles, did you remember it's Emily's birthday? Did you remember to get her something?
Yes, I've got something here. Where is my girl? Where is my birthday girl?
Don't interrupt her now, Charles. You can see her at breakfast. She's slow enough as it is. Hurry up, children. Now I won't call you again.
I can't bear it. They're so young and beautiful. Why do they ever have to get old? Mama, I'm here. I'm grown up. I love you all. Everything. I can't look at everything hard enough. Can I go in? Good morning, Mama.
Well now, dear, a very happy birthday to my girl and many happy returns. There's some surprises waiting for you on the kitchen table.
Oh, Mama, you shouldn't have. I can't.
But birthday or no birthday, I want you to eat your breakfast good and slow. I want you to grow up and be a good, strong girl. That in the blue paper is from your Aunt Nora, and I reckon you can guess who brought you the postcard album. Found it on the doorstep while I was bringing in the milk. George Gibbs. Must have come pretty early in the cold to bring it in. Very nice of him.
Oh, George. I'd forgotten that.
Chew that bacon good and slow. It'll keep you warm on a cold day.
Oh, Mama. Just look at me 1 minute as you really saw me. Mama, 14 years have gone by. I'm dead. Your grandmother, Mama. I married George Gibbs, Mama. Wally's dead too. Mama, his appendix burst on a camping trip to North Conway. We felt just terrible about it, don't you remember? But just for a moment, we're all together. Mama, just for a moment, we're happy. Let's look at one another.
That in the yellow paper is something I found in the attic among your grandmother's things. You're old enough to wear it now, and I thought you'd like it.
And this is from you. Why, Mama, it's lovely, and it's just what I wanted. It's beautiful.
Well, I hope you'd like it. Hunted all over for it. Your Aunt Carrie couldn't find one in Concord, so we had to send all the way to Boston. Wally has a surprise for you, too. He made it in manual training class, and he's right proud of it. Be sure to make a big fuss about it. Your father has a surprise for you, too. Don't know what it is myself. Here it comes.
Where's my girl? Where's my birthday girl?
I can't go on. It goes so fast. We don't have time to look at one another. So all that was going on, and we never noticed. Take me back up the hill to my grave. Wait, first, one more look. Goodbye. Goodbye, world. Goodbye, Grover's Corners. Mama and Papa. Goodbye to clocks ticking and Mama's sunflowers. Goodbye to food and coffee and new iron dresses, and hot baths, and sleeping and waking up. Oh, Earth, you're too wonderful for anybody to ever realize you. Do any human beings ever realize life will live it? Every minute?
No. The saints and the poets, baby. They do something.
I'm ready to go back. Were you happy? No. I should have listened to you. That's all human beings are, just blind people.
The sky's clearing up and the stars are coming out.
Oh, Mr. Stimson, I should have listened to them.
Yes. Now you know. Now you know. That's what it was to be alive. To move about in a cloud of ignorance. To go up and down, trampling on the feelings of those about you. To spend and waste time as though you had 1,000,000 years. To be always at the mercy of one self-centered passion or another. Now you know. That's the happy existence you wanted to go back to. Ignorance and blindness.
Now, Simon, that ain't the whole truth and you know it. Emily, look at that star. I forget its name.
My boy Joel was a sailor. Knew 'em all. He'd sit on the porch evenings and tell 'em all by name. Yes, sir, wonderful. Star's mighty fine company.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Here's one of them coming.
That's funny.
Ain't no time for one of them to be here. Goodness sakes.
Mother Gibbs, it's George.
Shh, dear, just rest yourself.
It's George.
And my boy Joel, who knew the stars, he used to say it took millions of years for that speck of light to get to the earth. Don't know how a body could believe it, but that's what he used to say. Millions of years.
Goodness. That ain't no way to behave.
He ought to be home.
Mother Gibbs? They don't understand, do they?
No, dear. They don't understand.
Most everybody's asleep in Grover's Corners. There are a few lights on. Down at the depot, Shorty Hawkins has just watched the Albany train go by. and in the livery stable, someone's setting up late and talking. Yes, it's clearing up. There are the stars, doing their old crisscross journeys in the sky. Scholars haven't settled the matter yet, but they seem to think there are no living beings up there. Just chalk or fire. Only this one's straining away all the time to make something of itself. The strain's so bad that every 16 hours, everybody lies down and gets a rest. 11 o'clock in Grover's Corners. You get a good rest too. Good night.
Peer pressure doesn't work on me. Not my peers. Thank you so much for coming. I don't have anything else to say. It's 9:10 in Ventura. You have a good night now.